The FIA has just uncovered a shocking and unexpected detail inside Max Verstappen's RB21 after his dramatic Qatar victory, raising new questions about how he managed to overturn McLaren's dominance in the middle of the championship fight. Fresh analysis shows behavior in the Red Bull that did not match its declared aerodynamic characteristics earlier in the weekend, which is why the FIA has begun reviewing the post-race data to understand what allowed Verstappen to control a race he could not win on raw pace. This comes as Verstappen closes the World Championship gap to only 12 points with one race left, creating the tightest title showdown since the era-defining decider of 2021. Before we dive into the full FIA findings and what they mean for Abu Dhabi, make sure you subscribe because this story is only getting more explosive. Max Verstappen entered the Qatar Grand Prix knowing he did not have the fastest car. The RB21 struggled all weekend with understeer on entry and limited rotation in slow corners, leaving Red Bull in a position where they had to accept that McLaren held the upper hand in raw pace. Throughout the first stint, Verstappen confirmed the imbalance, noting that the front end simply would not rotate the way he needed. The only path to victory would have to come through strategic clarity rather than lap time. The race transformed on lap 7 when the collision between Hülkenberg and Gasly triggered the safety car. At that exact moment, Oscar Piastri led comfortably, Lando Norris followed securely in second, and Verstappen could not attack either McLaren. Hannah Schmitz acted within seconds, calling Verstappen to box and instructing him to do the opposite to Norris. Verstappen expected McLaren to respond, and his reaction captured the shock. He said they are crazy when he saw both McLaren drivers remain on track. This single decision altered the championship trajectory. The new tires and the early mandatory stop allowed Verstappen to sit behind the McLarens with a strategic advantage they could no longer match. When Piastri and Norris were forced to stop later in the race to comply with the maximum tire limit, Verstappen inherited the lead naturally with a gap the McLarens could not realistically erase. Even though Piastri closed the margin during the final stint with impressive speed, Verstappen remained ahead by controlling his tire life and managing the degradation on the left rear. The victory was built through execution rather than dominance. This is where the FIA's interest began. During the early laps, the RB21 displayed the same front-end limitations seen all weekend. Yet after the safety car stopped, the aerodynamic behavior of the car stabilized more smoothly than expected. The FIA is analyzing why the car showed improved load consistency on the front axle relative to the declared model, particularly during high-speed transitions. There is no suggestion of illegality, but the unexpected stability triggered a procedural review to understand the origin of the improved behavior. Radio communications revealed a driver balancing aggression with precision. Verstappen reported that the car continued sliding slightly into turn 1, though he considered it manageable. Gianpiero Lambiase monitored Piastri's pace continuously, warning Verstappen that the McLaren was pushing in the low 1:24 bracket and instructing him to protect the left rear. They operated at the limit of tire management, ensuring the RB21 remained in a performance window that avoided thermal collapse. The championship context adds enormous weight to the FIA's review. Verstappen's victory reduces the gap to Norris to only 12 points heading into Abu Dhabi. Piastri sits 16 points behind Verstappen, which means the title remains mathematically alive for 3 drivers. If Verstappen wins in Yas Marina, Norris must finish 4th or worse to keep the championship. If they tie on points, Verstappen wins through superior victories. One race remains and Verstappen now carries the psychological momentum. The FIA investigation does not threaten Verstappen's victory, but it highlights how unusual the race became once strategy and car behavior aligned. Red Bull will bring no major upgrades to Abu Dhabi, relying instead on setup refinement and Verstappen's capacity to execute under pressure. McLaren may have the faster package, but Red Bull have the sharper operational discipline and the driver who thrives most when the world title is on the line. Qatar revealed something essential. When the race becomes a test of judgment, Verstappen is still the reference. Red Bull arrived in Qatar understanding that the RB21 lacked the raw pace necessary to beat McLaren on equal terms. The early laps of the race confirmed this reality with absolute clarity. Verstappen struggled to rotate the front end with the precision required through the medium speed sections that define the Losail circuit. As he attempted to lean on the car, the understeer that had been evident since practice reappeared, forcing him to adjust his entry lines and accept that McLaren had a natural performance margin. This set the tone for the entire race. Verstappen could follow. He could manage. But he could not attack the way a championship contender usually expects to. The second layer of the problem involved tire behavior. Red Bull quickly realized that the medium compound was more fragile on Verstappen's car than on the McLaren's. The left side of the tire began to overheat early in the stint, forcing Verstappen to modify his steering inputs and reduce his aggression in several corners. These adjustments preserved the tire surface but weakened his exit performance, particularly on the approach to the main straight. That compromised acceleration prevented him from using slipstream or DRS effectively. Every lap spent managing the tires rather than attacking reinforced the strategic disadvantage Verstappen faced. A third dimension of the issue arose from track position. Qatar demands strong rotation and a clean exit from its long final corner to set up any overtaking opportunity. Verstappen lacked the rear support to carry speed into this section and could not match the McLaren's in traction. This meant that even when he closed visually through the middle sector, he could not convert that proximity into a meaningful challenge. Red Bull found themselves locked into a defensive posture, protecting third place rather than applying pressure. For a driver accustomed to dictating the race, this represented a serious structural handicap. Environmental conditions added another element of instability. The Losail circuit blended wind variation with high track temperatures that punished cars with narrow operating windows. Verstappen reported moments of sliding mid-corner, a sign that the RB21 was highly sensitive to changes in aerodynamic load. Each small shift in wind direction altered the balance enough to disrupt his confidence. McLaren, by contrast, maintained smooth rotation through these same sections, demonstrating that the Red Bull's issues were rooted in the car's aerodynamic profile rather than external factors. This instability left Verstappen operating with caution, not aggression. Cockpit communication revealed the emotional and technical tension Verstappen was experiencing. He informed his engineer that the car continued to slide on entry, describing a balance he could manage but not exploit. Gianpiero Lambiase responded with strict guidance focused on tire life rather than pace extraction. These exchanges showed a driver and team fully aware that stretching the stint too far would risk losing even more ground. Verstappen's tone remained composed, but the message was clear. The car was functioning below the threshold required to challenge McLaren on merit. Another part of the problem was strategic vulnerability. With the RB21 unable to match McLaren's rhythm, Red Bull recognized that every decision from that point forward would carry championship consequences. The faster the McLarens pushed, the more Verstappen had to compensate through careful tire preservation. The race became a delicate balance between staying within striking distance and avoiding tire collapse. At this stage, Red Bull were not thinking about victory. They were thinking about survival, keeping themselves close enough that a single external factor could transform the race. The final layer of the problem was psychological and competitive. Verstappen has built his championship identity on controlling races through pure performance. Qatar forced him into a position where he had to wait for a strategic opening rather than create one. McLaren dictated the pace. The circuit dictated the limit. The tires dictated his aggression. Verstappen found himself in a reactive position, something that rarely happens in his career. This imbalance between his competitive instinct and the car's limitations framed the race as a strategic battle rather than a performance showdown. Only when an unexpected opportunity arrived did the race shift in his favor. Red Bull's engineering team began the Qatar Grand Prix under immediate stress because the RB21 was not delivering the aerodynamic response predicted by the simulations. From the opening laps, engineers saw that Verstappen needed to compensate for front-end instability that grew sharper whenever he increased corner entry speed. The car's reluctance to rotate forced the engineering group to reshape their strategy in real time. They shifted from pursuing competitive lap times to building a race plan that would protect Verstappen's tires, stabilize the front axle, and keep him close enough to strike if circumstances changed. Their work became a test of clarity under pressure rather than a search for speed. One of their earliest challenges came from managing the medium compound in a circuit known for aggressive left-sided degradation. Verstappen reported rising temperatures almost immediately, describing a front tire that resisted bite and a rear tire that demanded constant correction. Engineers reacted by altering differential settings and adjusting throttle maps to reduce stress across the exits. These adjustments were intended to preserve tire integrity rather than extract pace. Without them, Verstappen would have fallen further behind the McLarens and risked being attacked by cars behind. The engineering team understood that prolonging tire life was their only leverage until a strategic window opened. Energy deployment added another layer of complexity. Because Verstappen struggled to exit corners cleanly, the RB21 lost incremental momentum onto the straights. Engineers recalculated harvesting points to ensure Verstappen generated enough battery for defense and limited attack. They built an energy profile that protected him from falling into DRS range while keeping his battery stable for later phases of the race. This was meticulous, precise work requiring constant recalibration. Verstappen's smooth throttle modulation helped maintain this balance, but the engineering team carried the responsibility of ensuring the car stayed in a stable energy rhythm. Environmental conditions forced even more reactive engineering. Qatar's shifting winds changed the aerodynamic balance lap by lap, and Verstappen's radio messages confirmed that the RB21 responded sharply to these changes. Engineers monitored wind direction in real time and adjusted their guidance to Verstappen corner by corner, advising earlier brake release, smoother steering, and more gradual load application. These instructions were essential for stabilizing a car that could not tolerate aggressive inputs. The engineering team functioned almost as an additional sensor system, giving Verstappen the predictive information his car lacked. The defining moment for the engineering team arrived with the safety car caused by the Hülkenberg and Gasly collision. Red Bull analyzed the situation within seconds and recognized the strategic opportunity. They knew that McLaren's superior pace would dominate the race unless Red Bull created asymmetry. The instruction for Verstappen to box and to do the opposite to Norris reflected not instinct but calculation. Engineers saw that the only path to victory required forcing McLaren into a compromised sequence of stops. When McLaren chose not to pit either driver, Red Bull's engineers instantly understood that the race had shifted in their favor. After the stop, an unexpected phenomenon appeared in the data. The RB21 exhibited more stable aerodynamic load on the front axle, especially during the high-speed transitions where it had previously struggled. This stability did not point to any irregularity, but it did prompt deeper analysis from engineers and later from the FIA. Engineers attributed the change to the combined effect of fuel burn-off, tire freshness, and a transient balance condition previously unseen during the weekend. Their priority became helping Verstappen exploit the improved balance without returning to overheating, guiding him into a measured rhythm that protected the left rear while maintaining the advantage created by the strategy. The final engineering burden was psychological management. Verstappen thrives when he can attack freely, yet Qatar forced him into a posture of discipline rather than aggression. Engineers adjusted their tone to maintain control and reduce mental load. Instructions were clean, calm, and direct, offering Verstappen specific targets rather than abstract requests. As Piastri closed the gap in the final laps, the engineers maintained their clarity, ensuring Verstappen remained composed and focused on tire protection. In a race where the car's limitations were clear, engineering discipline allowed him to execute the narrow path to victory flawlessly.